I'm Max Stossel. One thing I like to do before I get into this, everybody join me, take one big deep breath in and out. One more time in and out. And so if you remember that time you scrolled through her pictures for a full 20 minutes but didn't like anything, because Facebook remembers. Facebook remembers everything you've ever clicked on, what you've hovered over, and for how long, what you like, share, and comment on, whose profiles you visited, and how deep you've gone. Facebook owns Instagram. And Instagram tracks the location of every picture you've ever taken. Facebook owns WhatsApp, and what's that but a way to track your messages back across your social graph? Facebook knows. And Facebook likes to show you content you'll like ideas you've already liked, and people with like ideas. So what happens when our perception of the world becomes an algorithm designed to feed us what's already on our mind, versus opening our minds, expanding our minds, and leaving our preconceived notions behind? What happens when Democrats are fed only hero stories about Democrats and horror stories about Republicans? When exactly the inverse is true too, then what happens? The truth matters most when it is not on your side. And don't get me wrong, social networks can be powerful forces for good, and we should empower those being silenced by tyrants, give a voice to the quiet and misunderstood. But can we get some transparency? Because recently I've been trying to hide my browser history from everybody, just because I don't want the internet classifying me. I want to see what my world wants me to see without being encumbered by all these algorithmic biases. My reasons for desiring all this privacy are less about what you're taking and more about what you're serving me. And I know I could turn on that tab of recency, but so long as everyone else is subject to being test subjects in digital laboratories, I'd like to keep them company. And if you're not convinced this filtration system is dangerous, think about that child growing up ingrained in ISIS and what he might think the value of a life is. And then try and understand that our cultural bubble has us believing something almost as troubling. We'd be blinded to it, as with every affirmation our beliefs would be redoubling, and I don't claim to be able to navigate the maze I'm describing. But let's take this moment together, recognizing that our world is a story these algorithms are co-writing. So let's seek out opposing opinions actively. Let's respect our opposition's intelligence, explore alternatives with empathy. Let's never stop striving for variety, because there are some things that Facebook doesn't know. It doesn't know the emotional impact of constant FOMO. It doesn't know how gratifying it is to overcome discomfort and truly grow. It doesn't know there are some people I need to let go, even if I'll never stop clicking their photo. It doesn't know how much the world needs voices with which we don't agree, how badly we need empathy for our fellow human beings. Everybody thinks they're the good guy. Everybody. Everybody is not wrong because they disagree. There's data to back up their side too. Our world now has so much bias that it's rare to find an ounce of truth, and the moment we stop looking for it, searching for it actively, not through our feeds, we lose. These algorithms don't care about bringing humanity together. Do you? Thanks. Yeah, clap it up for me. So I found that very concerning, as I've seen, and it's not just Facebook, it's not just Google. When I go to NBC.com, you go to NBC.com, we see different results based on our demographic, based on where in the world we are, based on whether we're on a mobile or other sort of device, and what happens to the world when literally every single one of us is living in our own little version of what reality is. When we're literally getting different answers to questions like how many immigrants committed crimes in Europe this year. We literally have a different sense of what is true. How are we supposed to resolve bigger questions, bigger conflicts? How can we have a working democracy when we don't have a shared understanding of what reality is? And there are lots of problems that creates, and fake news is a common talked about one right now. But actually, all of these have a common denominator, all of these problems. And that's the attention economy. We are in a world where the more of your time I can take, the more money I can make off of it, because I can sell advertising against it. And so it becomes my job, whether I'm Facebook and I'm holding a platform, or whether I'm a news site and trying to attract as much of your attention as possible, it is my job to grab as much of your attention as possible and hold it for as long as possible. And you might say, well, that's something that's been happening since the beginning of time. Like, who cares? We've always had this race. But what's changed is two things. One, we are now walking around with literal little tracking devices and screens and entertainment devices in our pockets. And two, the tactics that we use to capture and hold your attention, we've gotten so good at them because those are there all the time that the dynamic has changed. Right? Like when you feel that phone buzz, you literally have this cortisol spike. It's like a piece of you is sitting on the table away from you. Those of you who haven't looked at your phones in the past 10 minutes that I've been talking, now that I'm talking about it, are probably a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous about what you missed, who's texting you. But if you think about it, just put it away. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I just position myself as the living example.
I appreciate it. No, I'm just picking on you. But also, and this was when I first started getting into this, I always was thinking, well, what if I miss that important thing, right? Like there's that one, what if it's an emergency? But like, how often is that thing that you're looking at, how often did you actually have to respond to the buzz now? Like if you really think about it. And the more I kept on trying to go through exercise with my collaborator on this, they're like, well, but, and he's like, really? So 10 minutes. Like really, that couldn't have waited 10 minutes. And it's very rare. And like even mom in the hospital, like 10 minutes is not ideal, but like it's very rare that we need everything now. But that's how everything is designed. And so when I left the advertising world, I sort of fell in love with the startup community. And I was like, well, I know social media. Why don't I try to build a social video platform? And at that time, I didn't have the same attitude that I do now about essentially what social media is doing to the world. But I sort of realized while I was doing that it was my job to steal your attention. I was designing notification structures that would take you out of your world and into mine. And it works. Like we can just show through A/B testing, when we tweak this little thing, we hold attention for 10% longer. When we tweak this, 60% more people will come back into our app at that point. And I'm thinking, am I actually designing for people? Like you're not my customer, you're my product. I'm trying to sell you to advertisers. And I realized that as architects of our digital world, we need to be better because we can be. And we can see that these systems have been designed with intricacy so that companies can keep our attention indefinitely. I don't want to keep crushing these fucking candies. I don't want these alerts to completely command me. I don't care if that panda bear is dancing. Well, maybe. With a hula hoop. Okay, this is fantastic. I have to share this with my 10 friends and 10,000 strangers. Caption, who wants to throw a panda rager? Great. Let me go back about my life. For God's sakes, I'm trying to right swipe my wife. It's been 30 seconds and just 2 Facebook likes. Or is that just 2 for which I've been notified? Let me go back and check inside and see whose likes it tried to hide. They don't show them all. I wonder why. This panda's dancing. And another video plays after automatically. This one of a gopher that stage turns dramatically. It's like my attention is kept systematically raptured by algorithms that know exactly what I want. Or not what I want, just what I'll watch. And the people behind this intelligent design genuinely want to better our lives. But their bonuses just so happen to be tied to keeping time on site exceptionally high. And now even my news apps have been gamified. And what am I, not gonna click that one simple sex tip guaranteed to blow her mind? Wait, where was I? And why have I forgotten to look for that thing I'm supposed to find? And my God, look at the time. It is shocking. But somehow, yes, Netflix, I am still watching. Why do you have to ask in the middle of the show? If you're to wait till the end, I'm way more likely to just say no, but by then it's 3, 2, 1 to the next episode, and I know I should have more self-control. But just so we're clear, you just spent a couple $1 million producing this story designed to cut off at the end, leaving me wanting more. See, of course I want to see what you have in store. See my cursor already waiting there on the screen floor as you tease the next hour in all of its glory, and you'll give it to me, unless I actively abort. See, it seems this decision's already made for me. The countdown clock's moving. There it goes. 5, 4, 3. I need to sleep. but you made me want this more. This is not what I consciously signed up for when I hit play on one episode 6 hours ago. Architects of our digital world, you have more data, information, and control over our attention, the tools to tweak our emotions so we'll return to your experience. But is that what we should do? Or should you build digital tools so advanced they can actually enhance the world outside the device in our hands? Can you add so much value that it lets us put our phones back in our pants as fast as we possibly can? Not time-sucking, time-giving innovation. That's what it means to be truly technologically advanced. The future is not all screens. It's humanity enhanced. Thanks. If you guys want to sit, we can kind of back things up. You don't have to stand. You can also stay there. I don't mean to call you out, but there's room here if you're interested. And you're cool there. Sweet. I will continue back in this direction. Is that working? The TV over there? Can everybody see the TV? So it's interesting because you start to think about what is the alternative. So if everything is not designed to capture our attention, what is it designed for? And how do we actually, how is money ever going to be made in a system when advertising isn't funding this entire shebang? And part of that lies on us. Part of that falls on us as consumers. We have, to this point, been unwilling to pay for things that give us value. And again, for Facebook, for Snapchat, we're not the customer, we're the product. So they're not really designing for us. They say they are, and they sort of think they are, but they're not really designing for us. So what are some? So I have a couple counter examples of how technology could be designed that I want to play.
John remembers, I need to ask Nancy for that document before I forget. And there's this all-or-nothing choice, because if he doesn't ask her right now, he is going to forget. So John either holds on to that thought and is left with the burden on his mind of remember to ask Nancy, or he can get it off his mind and interrupt Nancy. So what does he do? He bulldozes her attention. And that's what we're doing all the time. We're bulldozing each other's attention with text, with chat, messaging, and all sorts of digital interpersonal communication. And every time we do that, there's a serious cost. There's a woman named Gloria Mark at UC Irvine who does this research on interruption science. And her research shows that it takes us about 23 minutes on average to resume our focus after being interrupted. It also shows that if we get a whole bunch of external interruptions in an hour, the next hour will self-interrupt ourselves more. And maybe you can relate to feeling like you've lost your whole day to a combination of interruptions and self-interruptions. So how do we fix this? Let's say we introduce Nancy with a new choice, and Nancy can mark that she's focused. Now John still needs to ask her for that document, except now when he hits send, he sees that it will hold the message and deliver it as soon as Nancy is no longer focused. Now you're all probably thinking, wait a second, Nancy would never do this because she's worried she's going to miss something, and what if there's something important or an emergency? But what if that's all communicated up front, and she knows John has a way of escalating any message? She can be focused and know for sure that if something important comes in, she'll get the interruption she needs. What this creates is instead of mindless or accidental interruptions, there's conscious interruptions, right? It's also changed the design question. We've changed the goal from let's make it really easy to send a message to one another, which is a pretty good goal, but we've upgraded that goal to help people communicate with each other well. What if technology was on your team to help you live by your values?
So there are a couple more of these, and
if you're like me, you've too often been sitting in an airport or crammed onto a middle seat of a plane at some horrid hour, either late at night or early in the morning, and you're thinking to yourself, why didn't I just spend those extra $40 on that other flight? We like to think that we're making conscious choices, but when we're all in a rush, the more we rely on the menus in front of us. Hipmunk is a travel website that recognized this, and they let you sort choices by human values. It's not just price or duration, but they let you sort by agony. They do this because they ask themselves, what is sorting for a price or duration about? It's not just about the raw numbers, it's about the human experience and values behind travel. So it's important to ask ourselves, what are the human values at stake in this choice? Another example where technology can help us live by our values could be when you're looking for directions from point A to point B. Of course we know we could walk, But what if, since you've told your phone in your settings that you've been wanting to exercise, it put a choice on life's menu that said, or you could walk, and here's the fitness goal you could achieve by doing so. Or maybe in your settings, instead of valuing exercise, you've said you valued productivity, so it offers up a podcast you might like to finish in that time. 28 minutes left in the podcast, 30-minute walk, it's on your team. There could be menus that sort choices by what matters to you. We can upgrade the goal from getting to point A to point B efficiently to getting from point A to point B well. And remember, no one decides what well means to you but you.
A lot of people are, Facebook will say, it's our goal to help, make the world more open and connected, where it's our goal to make people happy. They do literally give a survey question of how happy are you with our experience? But what are you really designing for? What are you really measuring? And you can create metrics that actually have to do with real life. Couchsurfing is a website that did a really beautiful example of this. Do you guys know what couchsurfing is? It's, for those who don't, it's sort of Airbnb-ish. It matches people who are traveling with people who need a couch to crash on. And you would think that they might measure their success in terms of, well, how do we match as many travelers as with as many people who need a place to stay as possible. But that's not how they measure their success. They measure their success based on, they took the overall ratings from both the host and the traveler, and they correlated that with the total number of hours that they estimated they spent together over their visit, and then they subtracted the amount of time they spent on site, because they viewed that as a cost. That's time that they took from their lives. And so what they created was this metric of essentially net positive good times. Because couchsurfing exists in the world, these people's time in their life was better by what amount. And so think about how beautiful the world could be if literally everybody measured their success in human values like that. What if Facebook's primary metric wasn't time on site, but ending loneliness, right? That's genuinely what most people are going on in that moment, right? That instant when, let's say you have canceled plans, you go on, it's a Saturday night, and all of a sudden you're in a thing that's designed to keep you there for as long as humanly possible, but that is not what's in your best interest. But if we start to be willing to pay for things that give us value, imagine, Facebook has the data to connect you with people you care about. Let's say you want to watch more sunsets. It knows that 2 of your other friends want to do that too. It can be a menu of watching more sunsets. Create this night that it knows is interesting to you. Take me on an adventure. You know what I like. You're using it to keep me here. Take me on an adventure through my city with things you don't know. The menu of options that each of these services could provide right now if they were to just change their value system is pretty staggering. And instead of optimizing for keeping us, if everything on the phone, instead of optimizing to keeping us there, let's say, take a different example as well. Someone's struggling to put food on their table. In the same way that everything is competing, doing everything it can to steal attention, what if everything is competing in that instant for that person to help him do that? And of course, we have to change metrics. We have to change how we're looking at profits and at advertising and at society to accomplish these sort of things. But technology can create this sort of utopia. But I would really argue that we've lost the first battle to AI. It's here. We're afraid of this thing in the future of running away and literally terminatoring us. And that's fair. I think that's a reasonable thing to be concerned about in the future. But right now, there are runaway algorithms that have just taken their primary purpose and gone to the extreme and done them so well. And what's the cost? What's the political structure of our world happening to right now? What's our attention? What's our focus? What has happened to news? We've lost the first battle to AI. And if we don't start thinking about this and reorganizing this now, it's only going to get much, much worse. Because next year, all of these companies, shareholders expect more attention. They expect more, so they have to get better at it. They have to do more. When YouTube does auto-playing videos, Facebook has to do auto-playing videos. Twitter has to do auto-playing videos. Whenever one new tactic is invented, the others have to do it, because if they don't, their competitors will, and they'll lose. And so when we see where this is going, and VR is another area that I'm extremely excited about, because there is capability here to train people for the real world in spectacular ways. we're starting to see, kids without ability to use their legs start to put those on in hospitals, and like they can really heal in a different way. People who are afraid of flying, of public speaking, can put on a headset, can do that, sort of make it really feel real. But when we look at where things are going, I'm also very concerned with something that immersive and how that's actually going to play out in society. And I was at Disney World as an adult. Any Disney fans here? We're in Romania. We're kind of far from. All right, good. I actually don't recommend going to Disney World as an adult. But there was one exhibit where you put on a headset and they take you through all of the Disney movies that I grew up knowing and loving. And there's one moment where you dive into the water with the Little Mermaid, and they drop water from the ceiling. And it's only a matter of time before more of our senses are ingrained in these things. And I just had this moment where I felt like I saw the future at Disney World, and it wasn't real. Well, not like I know real. Not like we've defined real. But I dove into the virtual sea, and I felt the water splash across my face. I heard the ocean in my ears. I saw a mermaid singing right in front of me, and I could touch, well, right through her. Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? And I can't be the only one to see the irony that she wants to be. Where the people are. She wants to see them dancing. But as a representative sample of supposed to be dancers, we're fine, thank you. Content here in our minds, thank you. Let's turn reality to channel 259, thank you. Walking around on those. What are they called again? Who remembers? Scene change to behind Aladdin and Jasmine on their magic carpet ride. And as I'm marveling at this new fantastic point of view, I realized love could live here too. I could build a whole new world with you, an adventure with you, fly through skies of green and trees of blue. This shining, shimmering, splendid gift is now available for just $19.99 when Squarespace meets Oculus Rift. Scene change to the African plains to where Simba and Nala are playfully playing. So close that I'm literally part of their game, though I can't quite feel the wrestling. Not yet. But give it time, they're still developing. They'll make simulation much more like the real thing. You'll have complete control over everything. Because we just can't wait to be king. We just can't wait to rule over the worlds we create rather than participate in the one we share. And we'll be able to build our own world soon. Let's have tea in Morocco this afternoon. And this evening, I'll build you a palace on the moon, and we'll sip soup on silver spoons, and for dessert, we'll have gravity removed and float through the cosmos with oxygen tubes. I've rejiggered the physics on Mars and Neptune to make them more suitable for you. Our mind's worlds have different rules. We're no longer bound by atmosphere, nature's limitations. Wiped clear, you can turn people on and off in here. So by channel 8625, my world's only touched by those I decide. I'm completely immersed in the confines of my own mind, opposing ideas left swiped aside. But maybe eventually we'll come to find we needed each other this whole damn time. Maybe this world we're the tiniest piece of has a system of balance we could never dream up, pushing us somewhere we won't consciously scheme of. Maybe we shouldn't have this much power. Maybe going forwards is backwards. Maybe we should go lie in the grass and make love without glasses, even if it barely stimulates orgasm. Classic. I want to be where the people are. Up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun. Wish I could be wandering free, part of that world. Thanks. So that's pretty much where I'm afraid the world is going in 30-ish minutes. I also want to, acknowledge that we're here and we need, we still do have stories that need to be told. It is often my job to help people figure out how to play into this system. I'm not recommending that we all run from it and turn off all of our devices and, rebel against the system like that, because there is so much value that is provided. And I want to open this up in a little bit. But I bet a lot of you are also interested in, how do I tell my story in this attention economy world? If you take a gun and you kill a whole bunch of people, That's like in this twisted sort of attention economy way. That's how some of these disturbed kids who are considering killing themselves like sort of go out with a bang. And I just like, and just watching this and just watching this Oregon sheriff talk about how he's not going to name this shooter. He's like, I'm not going to name this shooter. I'm not going to give him the credit he probably sought prior to this horrific and cowardly act. And then I watched that cut directly from him in like an emotional sheriff's face right to CNN, who literally on this giant screen was like, oh, actually, we do have his name, and we are reporting it. Here he is. He's 26 years old. He's from this place. Here's his manifesto that he wrote online. And I was just in awe. And I just felt like, okay, this is one thing that it feels like we all just should be able to agree on. And I dug into the research, into the data of it. And for every time mass media picks up one of these stories, there's like over the next 13 days, there's something called a contagion effect. There's an increase in the number of incidents by like 0.3, mass shootings that happens from making this a big deal. So it just seems like, okay, obviously none of us want kids to die in schools via guns. We should all be able to agree that like maybe we don't make a big deal out of this. And I wanted to get that message out, and I wanted to do it in a way that would really have a lasting sort of viral effect. And so we created a video that was inside of a Facebook feed. This part is really better shown. But so pretty much the idea was, where is this actually happening? How can you tell the story inside of the medium that you're talking about? And so we made a sort of vertical video. It was a scrolling feed that sort of told the story as we go. It went extremely viral and actually ended up changing the policy of some of these digital media organizations. I like worked with them to write here's like, if we follow this sort of protocol, we're not contributing to creating future shooters. But the point I want to make from a storytelling angle is just that for all of us, like, we don't really have a choice but to play into this game, to tell stories that do matter in this environment that sucks. And so we have to find a balance between how can we do the eye-catching thing and lead people towards value. And I think we need to be brutally honest with ourselves about what value is. We probably all have our own perceptions of value. We probably all think, when we're working, sometimes our version of value is, oh, we have this product and now people like it, and so we'll get this in front of them and that works. And like, yes, sometimes, but are we doing that and then maximizing it to the nth degree, to the point that they don't really need it anymore? Or are we just kind of like putting things in front of people that matter? And just creating stories that look and feel like they are in this digital environment is going to be an increasingly popular thing, I believe, and an increasingly effective way of capturing attention. There's something about when you scroll and then you start to see like the environment that you're so familiar with. You see text message conversations happening back and forth. You see a feed scrolling. Those are going to start to be more and more effective ways of actually getting a message across. So if we can tell these stories in the digital medium, I think they're going to be increasingly powerful. Sorry, I'm a little bit thrown from not having the videos, but I want to open up. To sort of like questions, to conversation. Just like, how do you guys feel about what technology is doing to us? What sort of questions do you have about sort of storytelling in our age? I kind of want to sit down and just open this up to the floor, if that's okay with you. Thanks very much. The question of companies that changed their story to really be about people. So one good example is the guy who invented the like button, the Facebook like button, has a very guilty conscience about it. And his name is Justin Rosenstein. He founded a company called Asana. Some of you guys might know or use Asana. And they measure their success in terms of like amount of time reduced communicating. So and they pride themselves on the stat of 15% less time spent scheduling. Headspace measures their success in average 10 minutes created of calm and stress-free mornings. What are some other of the good ones? Meetups. And so if you go to this movement is part of something called Time Well Spent. And if you go to timewellspent.io or you Google Time Well Spent, the movement, there are a couple more examples. I'm blanking a bit right now. There's some other very good ones. Meetup, do it yourself. ClassPass is measuring their success and like how well they actually get people out and exercising. AdBlock is measuring their success in decreasing the amount of distraction. But it is true, it's like your core values, and we're seeing more and more of this with social entrepreneurs, right? Like your core values have to be ingrained in the business because the temptation to break all of that will be there. And a lot of these apps and these companies are Band-Aids, and we need like whole structural change of how our tech ecosystem works. But like, if you're starting a company, if you're a part of a company, like, question, like, what are we doing? What are we measuring? And is this actually good for people? Yeah.
It's possible for any company to change their dynamic in a sort of on becoming more like people-oriented, or do you have to start a startup or make a new company from scratch to be people-oriented?
It's a really good question. We've been, as time well spent, we've been trying pretty hard to lobby within Google. Facebook, Google, and Apple have a disproportionate amount of power right now. Like, they could, if they got together in a room, we're like, oh, the world is really in crisis technologically, we need to change something. The three of them could really make a lot of change tomorrow, and we've been trying to make that happen. It's looking to me more and more like change actually has to come from the outside. You don't run it, like, they're not bad, anyone working at these companies, they're not bad people. Like, no one is sitting behind these screens and thinking like, I am making you feel sad and lonely. I am like giving you false information. Everybody thinks they're the good guy. It's just, when you're caught in that stream of what you're maximizing not really being about people, it becomes a challenge. And I think we will need disruptors. We'll need like a Facebook clone that is truly thinking about what is in your best interest. And if you get into the weeds of that, it doesn't really look like anything like Facebook at all, but with like a similar understanding of what they do. And same for Google, same for Apple. I hope Apple will be the first leader to step in and like change things around to start to create the infrastructure for this ecosystem. It's in their brand values, and like their money is not so heavily tied to advertising. But there have been some concerning things, like people submitting apps to the App Store that help you sort of disconnect. Apple rejects them sometimes, and I don't think that's Tim Cook, but there are people, when you get caught in the system of, this is what we're doing. Oh, what? This is going to make people spend less time on apps? No, we like apps. Apps are good. We're trying to maximize apps. That thought process becomes dangerous. But if you would go start those other companies, that would be fantastic.
You talk a lot about advertising, but I think there are two parts of it. Let's just say it's a good part, it's a bad part, okay?
Okay.
It's a good part that promotes human values.
Okay.
It's a bad part that promotes, let's say, product without human values, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So let's say the product is the corporate value, okay? So it has a price tag, it's a product, we want to sell it, okay? The other part is the human value. It doesn't have a price tag, yeah? Let's say it's art. For the right reason, let's say it's art, okay?
It's art, okay.
Okay. So how would you, let's say, convince the corporate world to make a change into this?
We have to do it with our dollars. Like, right, we have to do it with money. We have to show, and this is part of what Time Well Spent movement is about. And like, please, everyone, timewellspent.io, just hit the I'm in button. But it's just like we need to show like, hey, we as people, like, we're not happy with this system, and we're ready to pay for a system that actually cares about us. Because the reason that it's separate right now is because like there's not really much money in it not being separate. And until there is, it's going to be very challenging to actually get any sort of corporation to change. And so, how do we get there? What is the change model is a really complicated question, and we're working on it, and we don't have all the answers. But one way is to demand it. We have to show as consumers, this is not what we want. We don't want endless panda dancing videos. We want something that actually is caring about us and helping us be our best selves. And I truly do believe we can't solve, how can we solve any other problems until we solve this one? Like, how can we actually focus on climate change when we're not able to agree or see what's important? We're a distracted race. And so I think it's urgent. Yeah.
Come to think about it, the simple solution is to remove the money from the system, because the system is built on this idea of paying money for services. Money is the issue here. That's why you have global warming. That's why you have wars. So it's rather, it's very strict.
And a lot of people come to that conclusion when we start talking about this. I'm a capitalist at heart. I believe that we can align the incentives, and I'm excited about the idea of competition for what matters to us. I think it's more in the advertising range than it is money as itself, but removing money from the system probably probably does the trick too.
Do you have a book you would recommend?
On this topic, there's.
Topic that you think would help us understand better value, add value to our lives.
Yeah. There's something called Hooked, which goes into the details of exactly how kind of products work and the tactics that they use to manipulate our attention, if you're interested in that sort of side of things. And then, the books start to go into of what is value? How do we value our time? It starts to be more of a philosophical question. And like the book Sapiens, I don't know if you guys have read that, has been really interesting for me of just kind of taking a look at humanity as a whole and then thinking about what is it that we really want and putting your own layer on that. But really, it becomes a philosophy question. And it's, you start looking at the Descartes and Nietzsche's and that sort of thing of what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be alive? And I don't exactly feel qualified to give an answer to those questions. I'm sorting them out myself. But these are the questions we should be having in Silicon Valley. Right now, a handful of designers at a handful of companies shapes the thoughts, actions, and emotions of 2 billion people every single day. How can you not be talking about philosophy? How can you not be talking about what makes the most meaningful life? I love that you asked that question, because that's the question. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be alive? And for this blip of time that we are Homo sapien as we continue on until we pretty much probably become cyborgs in however many years, how do we set the program for humanity to continue? Come on, guys, let's do it. Yeah.
It's going to be a little tricky to explain this, but you talked about VR, and the obvious purpose of VR is to get as immersive as life gets. And imagine that the VR experience gets exactly as the real life gets, so it's exactly the real life experience.
Yeah.
Is there a real difference then between real life and what you experience in VR? Because from a hedonistic point of view, what you want is the experience, not how you live it. I mean, I'm not exactly agreeing with this, but I read about this once, and I think this is a nice question to be asked.
And so I think the way you're thinking about it right now, no. 70 years later, yes, is my opinion. Of if you can give me touch, sense, smell, whatever our 5 senses are, I'm blanking on the other 2, sight, taste, there we go. If you can give me all of those things, I am a poet, romantic, believe that is not a full experience. My 5 senses are not a full experience. I believe there is a lot in between. There's a lot invisible happening here right now that I think would not get picked up by that system, and I think I think that is not real. That said, in call it 7,000 years, when we actually discover more of what is really going on, in the air and energy between us, and we'd be able to replicate that in a VR experience, maybe that is real. But I mean, I don't believe sitting in a headset, having a machine tickle your arm is the same as having a person do it right now.
Yeah, I'm not asking about right now. Obviously, I'm going for 100 years from now. But
yeah,
just and a philosophical point of view.
I think 100, no. I think 10,000 maybe. I don't think we're close to figuring out what human experience really is, and I think we are, which is what scares me, which is why I'm nervous about this whole industry, because I think very quickly, as soon as you have those 5 senses covered in VR, people will say this is real. But I think we're missing a lot of that equation, and I think it takes a sort of self-awareness and a breath to see that it's not the same thing. And I think we're gonna live in a weird time, guys. It's gonna be a strange 50 years. What a time to be alive. Yeah. We should live while we're alive, yeah? Yeah. Cool. I'll be here. I'm happy to talk more about this. Thanks for having me in your country.